So Gandhi is now put in the middle of that. And what he does is he begins to inject that poison into the society. And that's what he did, which ultimately led to horrendous killings, partition of the colony, and so forth and so forth.
Gandhi's own words about black people are exceptionally racist. In his writings, he refers to them as subhuman and uses the N word. Such can be considered obnoxious today. Yet he's widely celebrated as a saint.
You cannot safeguard him. You cannot find a justification to safeguard the Mahatma. That's the reality. He comes up looking like a extreme racist, extreme version of hatred against black people. I mean, there is no doubt about that. And there is no other figure that you can look into the history and you can say, my goodness, this guy even is worse than that. No, he is the worst you can ever put together your hand on. Remember, the people who brought him to South Africa were Gujarati Muslims. He can speak, Gandhi is a Gujarati, plus he can speak the language. So they needed a man like him who's a lawyer as well as he speaks Gujarati language.
Gandhi played a crucial role in shaping a unified identity for Hindu India. He aimed to bring them all into one collective identity, despite his hostility toward different races and religions. His approach doesn't distinguish Gandhi from RSS and other right wing Hindu organizations because he was radical Hindu. But yet, he faced the wrath of RSS.
As long as Sikhs claim that they are separate and they are not Hindus, Gandhi wanted them to claim that they are Hindus. Remember, he became a Mahatma or a reincarnated god in the Hindus. Even the Muslims started to call him Wali. Wali is a sacred term within the Quran. The Christians began to look at him as a Messiah, as a second coming of Christ, reincarnated Christ. Even he was also a reincarnated Buddha. So different religions looked upon him as a Messiah within their own religious, cultures, except for Sikhs. No Sikh was going to call him a guru.
So, without knowing Martin Luther King, he deemed Gandhi as a saint who actually protected black people in South Africa.
They didn't know. They did not know. None of these people that I'm going to tell you, none of them really knew Gandhi's real history.
Sardar Gurmeet Singh Advocate says there are three types of men: those who are born great, those who become great by their qualities, and those who are made great by circumstances. Many consider Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, aka Mahatma Gandhi, to fit into the last category. Today, we will explore how Gandhi's transformation into a figure of immense significance unfolded. The narrative surrounding Gandhi as a man of deep ethics, a proponent of nonviolence, and a pivotal freedom fighter against colonial oppression is multifaceted. We welcome our special guest, Sardar GB Singh, to delve deeper into these themes. A retired colonel from the US Army, Sardar GB Singh is a renowned author who has extensively written on Gandhi and the Indian Constitution. His globally acclaimed book, Gandhi Behind the Mask of Divinity, transformed many people's perspective on Gandhi and revealed his true identity. Colonel J.B. Singh's book presents a thought provoking challenge to Gandhi's saintly image. It scrutinizes his claims of being an ethical and humble freedom fighter, particularly in the context of his experiences with racism during his time in South Africa. The 1983 film by Richard Attenborough played a significant role in elevating Gandhi to a global icon. The film was funded by the Indian government. The film introduced him to worldwide audiences and popularized his so called nonviolence and ethical teachings. Richard Grenier calls the film a pious fraud and a fraud of the most egregious kind. Today, Gandhi is widely celebrated as the father of the nation in India, with thousands of landmarks named in his honor. But as Colonel J.B. Singh's work suggests, we need to critically assess Gandhi and his legacy. Welcome to the show, sir.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
First of all, could you please share a little bit about your background, where you were born, when you moved to the United States and joined the US Army, and what provoked you to research Gandhi?
Well, I was born in post-British India in Punjab, East Punjab, and was raised there, went to school there, finished my education. Immediately after that, I moved to United States. And luck would have it, within a year, I moved into one of the Ivy League universities in America and studied there. And soon thereafter, I joined the US Army as a commissioned officer. While in the army, things started to roll very fast because I came across some very senior intelligence and extremely brilliant officers who began to reshape me on India or the subcontinent. They'll ask me some difficult questions. I mean, they were easy questions, but they were difficult to me. And I would be left stranded. I would have no answers. So I began to learn. And soon I began to question so significant number of things that were taught to me in India. I began to question. Now, 1982, if I remember, I joined my master's degree in political science. At that time, applied public administration at the University of Oklahoma. And my professor over there was teaching me communism, was a consultant to President Ronald Reagan. He and I, we stuck very close, and our friendship really grew. But very first time when he saw me in uniform, with a number of my classmates in uniform, all of us were in uniform. He was stuck with me. You know, you couldn't believe it, a man with a turban and a beard is an officer in the U.S. Army. But Gandhi movie had just come in. You know, the Richard Attenborough's movie. And he said, you know, this is a good way to start. So he said, Mahatma Gandhi was probably a communist. I mean, it really surprised me. I couldn't believe it. I raised my hand and began to question. Well, very soon I realized the man, my professor, is a hell of more intelligent than I am. So I backed off. But it was difficult for me to see if Gandhi would have links with communism. Well, anyway, I let it go, and then a month later, or very soon, I think it was February 1983, we saw the movie. Me and my family, we saw the movie Gandhi. It was a very emotional movie. It was made by the British stars. So you think like of course these people must have done the research, and the tears were coming in my eyes. I remember that it was such a emotionally driven movie, and I really felt that my professor could not have been right about that. I think Gandhi was indeed a great man. Now comes March 1983. Remember, I got a lot of things going on at this time. And there I was working in my library for a project, and I came across this magazine. And you mentioned Richard Grenier just now, and that's his article right there at the bottom. See the Gandhi nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
Right
Yeah.
there. You see that? I just saw that and I began to read. Cut it short, I took a number of visits here in the library to read this. I eventually copied this article, and it really brought about serious, serious changes in me. It made me to rethink. And I even called Mr. Grenier one time. He was from the US Navy. So I was able to get this number. By this time, he was correspondent. I worked for some of the magazines, conservative magazines in the East Coast. So I called him. And all he did was, he said, Mr. Singh, you do your homework before you call me. That's what he said. So I was going to the libraries anyway. I said, I never read a Gandhi book in my life. There was never a need for it. We all knew Gandhi based on what we were taught in India. Now I wanted to know because Richard Grenier had mentioned Gandhi was sergeant major in the army. Now I was at that time a captain in the US Army. And I knew what sergeant major is. And that's triggered the research. And it took me about 2 months to confirm, yes, Gandhi was sergeant major in the army. Okay, you don't remember when I say it took me 2 months. I also realized it took me a lot of anguish every day because my hero was being wiped out under right in front of me. So eventually, the next question popped up: why was he in the army? Well, found that out. This is in a war against black people in South Africa, and that was very difficult to swallow. Why was he going in a war against black people? Well, something happened over there. Well, I'm trying to understand, and there's nothing much there that I need to learn from. So one thing led to the other, and I just kept pushing my research on it. And it took me number of months to finally realize that this man that we have learned to admire needs to be rechecked carefully. And this story of what happened in South Africa, especially against black people, majority of the people at that time were black people, just like they are today, black majority. So, and they were really subjugated people. So, why would Gandhi go on a war against very subjugated people? It would be the otherwise. You would think of Gandhi otherwise, okay? So, these questions started to haunt me. And there were nights I could not sleep. What is going on here? Anyway, cut it short. As I said, many months later, I began to realize we need to do a research on it, complete. But evidence was so little anywhere. You know, being in the army, I'm traveling a lot, moving a lot. I kept the research open. Everywhere I would go, I'll get a piece of this information, a piece of that. I began to put it together. Okay. And I kept it with myself. I was not going to make any noises. Now, just want to let you know, in between, the incident of 1984 happened when Indira Gandhi sent the Indian army to invade the Golden Darbar Sahib.
Yep.
But a week or 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, she gave an interview in Time magazine, and she justified her actions by the teaching, one of the teachings of Mahatma Gandhi. So that was another strange thing for me, that Indira Gandhi is justifying that invasion based on the teachings of Mahatma Gandhi. Okay. So anyway, so the research is going on, and now comes mid 1990s. Mid 1990s, I was very lucky. I was able to have in my hand Gandhi's own writing papers. Okay, his own written down papers. Okay, validated by the Indian government, validated
Yeah.
by the Gandhian scholars, and validated by Gandhian family members.
Mhm.
I had it in my hand. Now remember, I'm working in for every day, and now I was able to put it together. Now by this time, I've read a lot of books, and I know what is going on. So with that, my training in the background was such that I was able to put it together. Once I was able to put it together, I got the whole thing in my head. Now I know what happened there. Now I know why he hated black people. So, question is, if all the stuff that he did to South Africa in South Africa against black people, and that story had been hidden, so I said, you know what? Let's move back to India now. Not because after South Africa, Gandhi came to India, 1915 all the way to 1948, 32 years. I said, let's go back and see what he did in India then. That's the second part of the research. Now we know what happened in South Africa from 1893 to 1914. 1915 to 1948, he is in India. Let's take a new look into what happened. Now remember, in India, you don't have Negroes.
Yeah.
They do not live in India. But in India, we have something else going on. Now, his racism, his hatred of other people, it has to adapt to a new setting. Just because he came to India doesn't mean that his hatred would be gone. As long as black people were there, he knew how to go after them. But now in India, you have varieties of Hindus, you have a varieties of Muslims, and you also have Sikhs over there and somewhere in the middle of them. Okay, you have different castes, you have different sects of Hinduism, you have different denominations of Muslims, you name it, as well different languages. And then you have a minority government of whites, British whites. So Gandhi is now put in the middle of that. And what he does is he begins to inject that poison into the society. And that's what he did, which ultimately led to horrendous killings, partition of the colony, and so forth and so forth. So I was able to put whole thing together, and my first book that you're reading,
Yeah.
that was a result of that. But the
So that basically we can say that the book is a result of almost 20 years research. You
almost
started your research after
yes.
1984, and I think the book came in 2004.
Yeah,
Your first.
you're looking at book came in 2004. The research started, let's say, in 1983, but it took a little bit, few more time to write a book. You're looking at about 20 years, maybe slightly less.
Yeah.
So it's extensive research that I did on the man.
Sir, my second question to you is Gandhi's own words about Black people are exceptionally racist. In his writings, he refers to them as subhuman and uses the N word. Such can be considered obnoxious today. Yet he's widely celebrated as a saint. I recently watched an interview with Gandhi's grandson, who tried to justify Gandhi's remarks by stating that when he made such comments and expressed hostility towards Black people, he was inciting Indian people against Blacks. Racism was a common practice. Gandhi's grandson says that racism was a common practice on that time. So we can't blame Gandhi for that. But the question is, if Gandhi couldn't rise above the prevalent mindsets of his era regarding Black people, what truly makes him a Mahatma or a saint?
Well, you asked the right question. I think you're referring to Raj Mohan. Am I right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I understand. I know the guy. Okay, listen. The problem here is Gandhi's grandson, especially him. Others have, I think, passed away. I think he's the only one, or there may be another one or two may be alive. They never come out truthful. They only respond because they have been caught now. Okay, and now they have to come up with the justification. Like he also did one justification. The problem here is when you know Gandhi's literature and you know his actions, they speak much louder than Raj Mohan can ever try to safeguard his grandfather. So the the reality is there is so much hatred, unbelievable. Okay, right at that time when he tried to justify his grandfather, right
Mhm.
at that very time, Gandhi is also in the prison in South Africa, and he's stranded in the company of black prisoners. And hell broke loose because at that time, when he's right next to the blacks, he is talking so much unbelievably racial stuff against them.
Mhm.
And Rajmohan, nobody asked a question to Rajmohan if he would like to listen. I mean, those realities are awfully painful to watch and read.
Yeah.
So I have reached a position where I always tell people you don't need to even ask these people to justify what they're saying. No, because all you have to do is read it yourself. Look what he's doing. All you need is evidence, and my book provides all the evidence in his own words. You can read it. You cannot safeguard him. You cannot find a justification to safeguard the Mahatma. That's the reality. He comes out looking like a extreme racist, extreme version of hatred against black people. I mean, there is no doubt about that. Okay? And there is no other figure that you can look into the history and you can say, my goodness, this guy even is worse than that. No, he is the worst you can ever put together your hand on, provided you get the details. So I think I answer now. Does he deserve to be called Mahatma? Obviously not. Obviously not. Now, what happened here is 1915 when he returns to India, Rabindranath Tagore give him a title called Mahatma. without really knowing the man. I mean, this is what is happening. Is the tragedy is happening that he is called Mahatma. Now, when you call somebody Mahatma and people have accepted him, he's become a godlike figure. Hindus now look at him as an avatar. Who's going to go and check what he's really doing in South Africa? So while in India, he also wrote two books. Okay, one of them is called the autobiography. Right before that is called Satyagraha in South Africa. So what he did, he ended up giving you false information that in case you want to know what Gandhi had been doing in South Africa, you read those books. But Gandhi was doing a great game because he never thought that there would be times that somebody will go out and check out his details in South Africa. But at that time, nobody really went out to South Africa and checked on him. Nobody did. So those lies that Gandhi had been telling us became the truth. That's our tragedy. That's our tragedy. So Mahatma had been injecting the poison into the community of affairs. Among the Sikhs, that's right, among the Sikhs too, among the Muslims, and also among the Hindus. And at times also he was inciting crowds to go after white people. And that he was also doing. Okay? So you can just see what he was doing. And eventually it led to huge massacres, huge bloodshed, plus partition of Punjab, which is so important for us to know what happened here. What happened? We Sikhs lost half of our own homeland. What happened to the Punjabis? What happened to the Bengalis? I think all of that we need to re-look at it and what role Gandhi played in bringing about a disaster. Okay, so that book opens the door. But to look into that, you got to know first the basic foundations of this man. And that book that you have, Gandhi Behind the Mask of Divinity, it gives you the foundation on which you can understand now what happened here.
Yeah. So two incidents in South Africa. The first one is very famous incidents where we have been taught in the schools that Gandhi was kicked out of the train for being non-white. And the other is I was reading your book and a couple of other articles where it mentioned that Gandhi volunteered Indians in South Africa against the Zulu uprising in the Kafir War. So the both incidents, they are contradictory. What you say about that?
That's true. Now, with the train incident, because it's supposed to be the most pivotal part of his life, the story is that 1893, remember, he's about 23, 24 years old, young man, and he had landed in Durban, South Africa. And within a week or so, his employer bought him a first-class ticket. And he has to travel from Durban all the way to Pretoria, which was in the neighboring state of what we call Transvaal. Okay, this is before South Africa became one country. Okay, so six hours into the journey from Durban, there's a place called Pietermaritzburg, which is a capital of a state of Natal. Okay, that's the capital, and it's about 9 o'clock at night, so it's nighttime, and it's also winter in South Africa, even though it's May or June, but it's winter over there. The train stopped and somebody saw him, a colored man, a brown man sitting in a white class compartment or white people's compartment. But even though he claims that he has a valid ticket, anyway, cut it short, they asked him to leave. He would not leave, and he's thrown out, and his luggage is also thrown out, and he spends the entire night, which is cold, which is winter. And from that onward, the great man that we call Mahatma now, the great man who's going to fight for civil rights against injustice, he's going to fight for justice, equality, and so on. That's where he comes out. Now, cut it short, next day he takes the train and then moves on, and eventually in the middle of I'm forgetting the name of the place, he takes a ride for another 135 miles in a carriage which is driven by horse. And on the way he's beaten by the conductor, literally beaten. And then he reaches Johannesburg, and then he takes a train, and another incident happened. So 3 days later, he reaches to his destination, and is full of events, full of drastic events that happened to him. But that incident that happened at Pietermaritzburg is considered the most pivotal of all. It is the incident that changed his life. Okay, now, so as I was researching him, I began to have some doubts on this, that maybe this incident never happened. Something, Gandhi is playing a trick on us. So anyway, years later, let me just hold it. Years later, this is my third book. It's called Gandhi Under Cross-Examination. See that?
Yes.
That's about that incident.
Mm-hmm.
That incident never happened. Okay? It's a lie. Now, one of the amazing things you heard is that this incident of 1893, question is, when did Gandhi tell us about that incident? Well, he told us an incident that was published in a book published in 1909, 17 years after, in a book published in England.
Yep.
Written by Reverend Doak, and Gandhi himself dictated the book. So Gandhi is telling the story himself, even though author is somebody else.
Yep.
So that's the first time he tells us about that incident, 17 years after the alleged incident. Got it? And then the book is never promoted in South Africa. Just keep that in mind. Now, 1915, he comes to India. So then he wrote a book called Satyagraha in South Africa, which, even though it took a little bit time to write that book, but for clarification purposes, let's say 1924. So he wrote that book and he mentioned that incident. So that's number two. Then comes Autobiography, very famous book that, for practical purpose, 1925, even though that book in serially, it came up all the way to 1929. So for practical purpose, for discussion, 1925. That's the third time he mentioned about that incident. And the fourth is 1935. He is giving an interview to a reverend, very, very famous Reverend Mott. Okay? So 4 times. Let me make sure you get it. So one time in South Africa, even though the book is published in England, and the 3 times in India.
India, yeah.
The problem is every time he opens his mouth, the story changes.
All right.
Okay? Remember, he's supposed to be the victim. So he should be telling the truth.
Yeah.
Every time he opens his mouth, the story changes.
And the book wasn't published in South Africa because they were going to find out the truth.
Exactly. You got it. Okay? So he's playing this game. So as I said, this is my last book that I wrote on him. Okay? It's about that incident. And you will be blown away how much lie. Every word that comes out of his mouth is a lie. And how he manipulates us with those lies. How he manipulates us with those lies. Now, why would he lie about this incident? Well, the reason is that at this time when he wrote that book, he wants to change the story of his background. He wants to look like a martyr for the cause. So, but he has a history of anti-racism, anti-Black racism. So he has to change the story and make himself look like a victim. And that's what this thing is. He doesn't want you to think about Blacks for what he had been doing. He wants you to think about him, that he
Mhm.
is a victim of white racism.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what he's doing. So it is a cover up. It's an attempt to cover up his anti-black activities.
Mhm.
And it continues. Even he wants to look white people bad, and that continued in India also.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what this thing is all about. Now the second question you asked is the war. Now in 1906 there was a war in South Africa against the Zulus.
Mhm.
Zulus are black tribes, and 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 this was by the time his second war in South Africa. First war was Boer War, Boer. That was 1890, 1899. Okay, where
Mhm.
Gandhi participated in a war, but he never got a military rank. He stayed more on the civilian side of the rank. But in
Mhm.
1906, in the Zulu War, he got the military rank, and the sergeant major. He had his own unit. He was commanding his unit. And of course, he wanted to be trained in the military so that he can really go and essentially kill black people.
Yeah.
But whites did not trust this guy. Whites did not trust the Indians in Nersa, but they let him come and at least function as a unit within the what we call stretcher barriers. Okay,
Mhm.
but you can read his writings; those are there in my book. How much he really desires military training, combat training. Okay, and you can just see how proud he is having served the military. You can see the details one day by day. I put it in my book what his unit was doing, what he was doing. Okay. Now, those are contemporary records. Those are contemporary. And by the way, he's after the war is over, he's awarded.
Mhm.
He's given a medal and he's so proud of it. Okay. All of that you can see it in the book. But later on, especially in India, the story changes. Now he doesn't want you to know what actually he did in South Africa. Now he
Mhm.
wants twist the whole thing, and the twist is that he joined the army because he wanted to help the blacks.
Mhm.
Okay, if he had not done it, the whites would
Mhm.
not taken care of that. Oh, you could just
Yeah.
see the twist he's doing. In other
other
words,
other prevalent notion is like the way he stood up for the Indians in South Africa. He would also would have stood up for the discrimination against the black people by the whites and the Indians, but that wasn't the case.
not at
He was
all.
loyal, yeah, loyal to the British Empire, and so he was just fighting for his own rights and the rights for the Indian people in
No,
South
no,
Africa.
not even for the rights of Indian people.
Okay,
Actually, rights for the upper caste,
all
or
right.
you can say upper classes. Remember, the people who brought him to South Africa were Gujarati Muslims.
Hmm.
Gujarati Muslims. He can speak, Gandhi is a Gujarati, plus he can speak the language. So they needed a man like him who's a lawyer as well as he speaks Gujarati language. And as well, he speaks English language. So they brought him for their purpose. So Gandhi was there to protect their rights. He was, you got it? But the Indians who were there, untouchables of the Shudra caste of the other, that was not the issue for him. Those underclasses were different issues. Okay. So it's a very minority group that he was representing. Okay. So we just again have to be very careful. The image that we were given is essentially false.
So he didn't speak at all for the people who were migrated to South Africa as a labor from
He
predominantly
started,
from the Hindi belt.
yeah, he started to deal with them almost right before he left South Africa, right in the tail end of it. And the reason is that the Gujarati Muslims who were financing him, they backed away. So now Gandhi needs somebody else. And
Hmm.
this is exactly, remember, sir, they're providing him money. And now they're not providing money. He started to move in the other direction. And he caused some problems in, I think, 1912, 13, or 14, somewhere around. And I have it in the book, the details. But he knew the time for his to play in South Africa is over. He needs to get out. And he got out. He got
Yeah.
out. Okay. and he eventually ended up in British India. And the rest of the story is of British India, what happened there. So I tell my black friends, especially of South Africa, I say, you guys were very lucky for all that he did to you guys over there. At least he left you.
Mm.
At least you were able to fight your own way to bring equality and justice to your life. I said, we in India, we got trapped
Yeah.
and we are not able to take a U turn. Okay. We are still trapped into that. So, anyway, that's the little story on that.
Yeah. So we had to deal with Gandhi. That's the fate of the Sikhs and
That's right.
other communities. Um, so Gandhi made very contentious remarks against Sikh gurus and the sages of other religions, calling Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj a misguided patriot and asking Sikhs to ditch their swords.
Mhm.
If they wanted to be fit for the non-violent movement. Was it just to become a famous with no knowledge of the Sikh faith and history? And or was Gandhi a truly non-violent leader? Because many believe that he pushed Sikhs into so-called satyagraha and the bloodshed that happened after the satyagraha in Punjab.
Well, first thing is, I'm writing right now series of articles on Gandhi and his relationship with Sikhs. I'm doing that right now. Okay, I just finished commentary number 4, and now what happened with the Sikhs is really a tragic story because, as I told you, once he came to know of Sikhs, especially let's say starting with Jallianwala Bagh tragedy, 1919, 1919, okay, 1990. That's where the link begins to develop.
Mm,
And 4th of November 1919, that is almost 6, 7 months after Jallianwala Bagh tragedy, Gandhi is given a rousing reception at Darbar Sahib. Okay,
yeah,
and then he is also given a saropa. Now it's not in our record. In the Sikh record, if you look at it, it does not exist.
yeah.
But when you read Gandhi's writings, this thing pops up. So I've been going through stages by stages what happened here and how Sikhs end up being manipulated by him.
Mm,
Now you mentioned something like when he called Guru Gobind Singh misguided patriot. In just next few months, I'll be writing an article on it, and you'll have more details. The tragedy of the whole thing is that there was a Sikh leader at the time who figured that out and he questioned Gandhi about why he wrote it,
mm,
and then the whole issue died down. It was just like issue is gone, and it should have been a warning to the Sikh leaders at the time. Now wait a minute, take another look at this guy. What is he doing? But the tragedy that really happened is that I contend to say that the SGPC and Akali Dal that were formed in the early 1920s, they were already sold out to Gandhi. They were already made in the image of Gandhi.
mm,
Gandhi, in fact, whatever they were doing, they were taking their inspiration and direction from Gandhi. So Sikh leadership that we know today, SGPC and Akali Dal, they were all made by Gandhi. Let's be honest about it, and let's face that reality. And
mm,
this is the sooner we face that reality, and reality is that these guys who look like Sikhs, Akali Dal and SGPC, they were never their independent bodies, thinkers, never. They always were under the direction of Gandhi and Gandhians.
mm,
Okay, and it is there even today. It hasn't changed. This is why these people will never behave properly. They never will independently evaluate what really happened to them. And this issue that I'm right now working on at the very foundations of it, Akali Dal and SGPC, that's exactly where I've been writing articles now. Okay. And thanks to Gandhi's writings that I got, that's where this thing opened up. I said, wait a minute, there's something is not right here. And that's where I've been working on for years what he did to the Sikhs.
Yeah.
all the tragedies of Punjab leading to 1947. I think we need to revisit the whole thing.
Yeah.
What this man was capable of doing to us and what it did to us, and we still have not learned a lesson. And that's the reason I end up writing these books so that we learn from it. What happened? Hopefully, we can learn from it. Okay.
Yeah. Um, I truly agree with you, as you mentioned that the most of the Sikh leaders of that time, Gandhi manipulated them. But I interviewed one of the predominant Sikh historian in the last a few days, and he mentioned that when Sikhs were fighting for the control of the gurdwaras to take the control back from the Mahants,
Mhm.
Gandhi asked Sardar Kartar Singh Chabbar that we should fight for the freedom of the country first, and then we can, once we free the country from the colonial rule, then we
Mhm.
can certainly go for the control of the gurdwaras. And Sardar Kartar Singh Chabbar replied that if we get the freedom from the British, we're never going to get our gurdwaras back. So, a couple of events where Gandhi failed to manipulate the Sikh leaders, but yes, I agree with you. The most of the times he tried his best.
Well, look at this way. You face the ideology. When you study, let's say, Akali Dal, for example, or SGPC, what you do is you study their ideology first. Once you understand that ideology, and then you put the Gandhian ideology and you begin to parallel it. That's where it begins. Then you look at history, how this movement came about, how during the beginning of what we call Gurdwara reform movement,
Yeah.
how much was the role of Gandhi in this whole setup? And now, which is important, but then if you go back further, 20 years or 22 years further to 1947,
Mm.
the disasters that happened in 1947, what happened? Why these leaders were so helpless in doing anything that they should have done, but they didn't do it.
Mhm.
And right after partition, which I'll talk to you later, they even immediately, when all the disasters have happened, they end up to Gandhi. They end up calling it, see what happened to us. I mean, I put it in the book, okay? You can read that.
Yeah.
I think the whole thing needs to be revisited. That if these guys were, if they were at all even degree of independent, what
Mhm.
happened in 47? What happened? Why they were acting that they were acting? And if this is the case, that Kapoor Singh's book in English, that translation, it is worth reading it. What he's telling, what these guys were doing, Akalis. I think all of that needs to be reassessed.
Yeah.
Okay, all of that thing needs to be reassessed. What really happened here? And I'm working on it. So bear with me. You know, you can read my first three commentaries on the website I've given you.
Yes.
And the fourth one, I just sent it yesterday, or even today, actually.
Yeah.
You're most welcome to look at it. Now,
Yeah. No.
can you tell me why Gandhi was given a rousing reception on 4th of November 1919, and he was given a sarupa at the Gurdwara in
Yeah.
Golden Temple?
Yeah. I was reading your article, and as you mentioned that he stayed there for almost 5 hours.
5 hours.
Yeah, and the crowd was gathered there, not a Sikh crowd, to cheer him. And there's a lot of other things that needs to be investigated.
Exactly.
And yeah, I hope I'll wait for another article by you
Okay.
on this incident.
Now
My
remember
next,
one thing:
yeah, sorry.
Sikhs haven't written this history. It is Gandhi's own writings are telling us.
Mhm.
That's where we are learning. Whereas in our history, the whole thing is blank. This is why I'm very careful of what happened here. We need to take a very close look into it.
Yeah. So the concept of nationalism in India and its idea of being one nation has been propagated since 1947 or even before that. Um, The Congress Party and the Gandhi leveraged the narrative surrounding Hindus to unify various cultures, languages, and the religious under the Hindu culture and religion, the umbrella of Hindu culture and religion. Gandhi played a crucial role in shaping a unified identity for Hindu India. He aimed to bring them all into one collective identity, despite his hostility toward different races and religions. His approach doesn't distinguish Gandhi from RSS and other right wing Hindu organizations because he was radical Hindu. But yet he faced the wrath of RSS and its member, Nathuram Godse, who killed him. Why is that?
All right, good question. Let me first give you when my book came out, the one that you have it, Gandhi Behind the Mask of Divinity, 2004. That's when it was released. And a friend of mine in Bombay, he took the book and he drove to Pune. If I remember now correctly, Gopal Godse, Nathuram Godse's younger brother. By this time, he's an old man and he's out of the prison, okay, for the conspiracy to kill Gandhi. He's now out. And so my friend took the book and gave it to him. And the guy's going through the book, he could not understand, he couldn't believe it. So he asked the man, and he asked, because he see my name, he asked him in Hindi, which I'm going to say it in English, is this a Sardar who wrote this book? He said, yes. And then he said, he said, we thought, he, his brother, and there were 7, 8 guys. He thought we knew Gandhi so well. We knew who he was. He said, this stuff we did not know. This stuff that came out from in my book. So what he did, he was so impressed that he said, he picked up one book. He said, this book, his brother wrote it when he was in the prison, but it was not allowed to be published by Nehru. So he gave that manuscript to his brother, Gopal. So Gopal, by this time now, 2004, he's already out, but he had gotten that book published. Okay? So he gave that book to my friend. He said, make sure you send it to him, which I got it. Now, based on that and some of the stuff I got, what I found that these Chipamin or something like the Brahmins of Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra. Now, these guys were not stupid. They were very intelligent people. They were they had their own newspaper, and they were watching what was happening to the people. They were watching, and even though partition happened, millions of people have died, and all the disasters taking place, and they're watching, and they realize that as long as this man stays alive, he's going to bring more bloodshed. I mean, this is their observations. And they realize that Indian people, especially the Hindus, because he is Mahatma, they're captivated and they are captured also by that aura. They're not going to do anything to protect themselves. So they calculatedly realized that he needs to be murdered in order to protect especially the Hindus as well as other communities. Okay? It was their calculated move to get rid of Gandhi. And that's really what happened. Now, one thing also they noticed that RSS and Mahasabha, they were taking orders from Gandhi. Now, these guys were also members of these organizations, especially RSS. Actually, they had resigned their membership from those bodies in order to do this job. Okay? But in the popular literature that I've seen complaints, it's always referred to as if these people were members of RSS and that's why they did it. And I try to remind people that RSS was opened up in 1925. And it was opened, its foundation was laid by the blessings of Gandhi. I think we need to be careful of what we hear. Okay, just because we have heard the other side, we need to be careful. There is the other side also that we need to be careful of.
So the
Uh-huh.
question is, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Um, Gandhi was doing the same job behind the mask of divinity.
Mhm.
Gandhi and every other Congress leader on that of that time. Why would the Chatpavniya Brahmins of Maharashtra wanted to stop the bloodshed that was Gandhi was creating, or Gandhi was pushing, or provoking people to do so? Because their ideology was same. Gandhi was doing the same job. He was putting his efforts to create the formation of the Hindu Rashtra.
Sure. But remember, Hindu, when you're making a Hindu Rashtra, but there's a lot of bloodshed going on. Now you and I are talking in end of 2024. Put yourself in the time of 1947, a little bit before, at that time, and after. Just imagine the bloodshed that was going on at the time. Just look at that time. Uh, we Sikhs look at all the shit happened with the Sikhs, but also face attention. Hella more Hindus were uprooted from Punjab on the other side.
Yeah.
Okay. Also look at the hella more Muslims were uprooted,
And
and
whatever
also
happened in Calcutta a few
yeah,
years before
so
that.
understand. So these guys, Nathuram Godse and his group, they were watching the whole thing, and they were not happy. They were not happy what they were watching. Now the partition has happened, and they realize the theatrics of Gandhi, that it's causing even more troubles. And they realize if he continues to live, they're going to
Mm.
see hella more problems down the line. I think rightly so, they realized this whole thing has happened because of this man. Okay. Now they didn't have the background like I bought it all, the background as to what he really was. They did not know all that detail. But having been there, and they were not, as I said, they were quite intelligent guys. They saw what this man was capable of doing because they saw the result of it. You and I were born much after. They were eyewitness to this whole thing. And
Yeah.
I think they decided at that time they would be better off if they come forward and assassinate the man. And that's exactly what happened here. That's
Mm.
how it was a you got to look at their motive from that angle. Okay, once you begin to see their activities from that angle, I think you begin to understand them from different angles, as opposed to what we hear from different Gandhians, so to speak. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And I thank Gopal Godse for it. Since he
Uh-huh.
has passed away, but I really thank him for opening my eyes as to what was going on with the Gopal Godse brothers, and as well as a number of other friends who were participant in the conspiracy. Okay.
Mm. Yeah. So Gandhi was a deeply religious man, or became a religious man after coming back from South Africa in the later years. Um, he was a man, as you have mentioned, he was a man of below average ability in his early life. As a student and as a lawyer, he was an average. But when suddenly he found himself at the top of the among Indian leaders, when he returned back from South Africa, he developed a sense of vanity. So you think that he started disrespecting Guru Gobind Singh Maharaj and other sages just to get into the limelight, or was there any other reason? Because I don't
Well,
think, yeah, go
are
ahead.
they?
Sorry.
Let me tell you. As long as Sikhs claim that they are separate and they are not Hindus,
Mhm.
they were having problems with Gandhi. Gandhi wanted them to claim that they are Hindus. And if they are not going to do it, then he's going to make sure they do it.
Yeah.
You got it? He's going to find other ways of doing it. So one way was he wants them to get rid of this sword, this kirpan, okay? And he was trying to find other ways to, he's always tweaking. He's always doing that Sikhs are Hindus, and he would use his Mahatma stature to make these proclamations. And often enough, Sikhs did not buy that. Remember,
Mm.
he became a Mahatma or a reincarnated God in the Hindus. Okay, even the Muslims started to call him Wali. Wali is a sacred term within the Quran.
Yeah.
The Christians began to look at him as a Messiah, as a second coming of Christ, reincarnated Christ. Even he was also a reincarnated Buddha. You got it? So different religions looked upon him as a messiah within their own religious, cultures, except for Sikhs. No Sikh was going to call him a guru. No Sikh guru was called guru. No Sikh is going to call him a sant. You see, he never could enter within the Sikh theology. Never. So what he could do, he could throw stones from outside. And that's what he was doing. All along, he had been throwing stones at us. Okay? Understand, this is what is happening to him. How come he's failed to be a guru or guru-like figure among the Sikhs? No Sikh would allow him to do that. Okay? And he could not understand that. So all he could do was throw saadiyan jutiyan saade sir te maariyan. That's all he was doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, he tried his best with Sikhs as well. But he was a famous man, not between Sikhs but other religions before 1947 or before his death. But between 1948 and 1983, when that movie came, the movie funded by the Indian government in 1983, between that time was the popularity dropped because there's not many writings and studies available in the foreign universities and other places of academia that can show us that the Gandhi's popularity was same after his death. But that movie, so you think that, my question is, you think that the Indian government actually propagated him as a hero, as a global hero of non-violent movement, and that's how Gandhi became Gandhi, that Gandhi we see today?
A good point. Let me show you one book. Okay, let me show you 2-3 books actually, because since you mentioned it, I don't know if you can see this. Peace Agitator, Story of A.J. Mustard. See that?
Yeah.
See that? Okay. Here's another book I'm going to show you. Right there. I don't know if you can see that. See that?
Yeah. Abram went out here.
And plus, I can show you, look at all that my books table. See that? See that?
Yes.
Okay. There are hundreds of books and there are thousands of books this way. Thousands. Now, remember, whatever I learned in India is what I learned in India. But when I came to America and began to do research, what I found that long before the movie came out, there's a lot more going on here.
Yeah.
Lot more. Plus, don't ever forget the American Civil Rights Movement, where Martin Luther King came along. This is all before the movie.
Okay.
So
Martin Luther King mentioned Gandhi in his movement.
Of course, many times. Okay. So you got to look into that, like the idea of civil rights movement, that it became successful in America. And there are people in America, they credit Gandhi for that. You see, this is all before the movie came out.
So without knowing Martin Luther King, he deemed Gandhi as a saint who actually protected Black people in South Africa.
They did not know. None of these people that I'm going to tell you, none of them really knew Gandhi's real history. They knew exactly what we were taught when we were growing up in India. That's all they knew.
Yeah.
1959, for 1 month, Dr. King, his wife, and there was another professor, Lawrence Reddy, they came to India to visit. You were not born, but I was a small baby boy at the time in New Delhi. Okay. And they spent 1 month traveling all over. Give you one example. Prime Minister of India at the time was Nehru. So they had a dinner with Nehru, 4 hours. 4 hours, and they recognized, Dr. King recognized that Nehru was building nuclear weapons. Okay. So similarly, when he met Vinoba Bhave, who's another right-hand man of Gandhi, He was
Yeah.
quite shocked. He was quite shocked to look at these people. All I'm saying is, even at that time, Dr. King did not know Gandhi's real history in South Africa. He did not know. And I've gone through, as I said, I've gone through my book was the first time it opened the doors. The real history of this man. And now working on this another book, what happened, especially with Dr. King. I'm writing a book on it. What happened here? Why he did not know all this stuff? What really happened? Okay. So understand this now. What happened here is by the time the movie came, there is a new generation that is coming up who has
Mm.
been fed the American Civil Rights Movement story. So when the Gandhi movie came, it caught their attention.
Yeah.
Got it? Of course, it caught my attention too, and therefore for the research. But it also caught their attention from a different angle. From a different angle. Okay? So this is what has happened here. Historically, Indian government took advantage of it. That's what Indira Gandhi, when she paid for the movie and all that, they took full advantage of the people who were always vulnerable to accept that image of Gandhi that was given.
Mm.
But had she did not know that this Gandhi movie will open a new door, and a young man like GB Singh is going to come forward and do a whole new research. Nobody knew that. Even I myself did not know that. I just
Yeah.
kept pursuing. Okay, I
The
became
article,
suspicious.
yeah, the article you mentioned by Richard Grenier,
Mhm.
he watched the movie and he said the whole cinema on that time was crying except me, and I had a totally different perspective of Gandhi.
Yeah.
So do you think the people he served ever since he went out of India, he served Britishers, and those colonial powers, they made the Gandhi we see today. Not actually the Indian government. The Indian government came later, sponsoring that movie, funding that movie, and doing other sort of work to make big Gandhi and create a saintly image of him. But before that, British actually started making that Gandhi that we see today.
Well, listen, number of Indians have told me, even gone to the point that some of the Indians, I would say, they thought he was that British were protecting him while he was in India, and in fact, some even claimed that he was a British agent. Okay,
Mm.
I have gone through the entire literature. I've gone through a lot of research. I'm not sure if I would call him a British agent. I don't think so. But I think what has happened here is he definitely was quite protected under the British. That's for sure. That's for just like he was protected in South Africa, so was in India also. Was he agent? I don't know. I don't think so. Okay, not in the traditional sense, unless he was an unwitting agent. That could be possible. But I can give you one example. Uh, Long before this, is when I was still in the active army, there was a local South Indian older gentleman who one time heard about me and came to see me. Very nice gentleman, Hindu family. And this, he said, I heard you're really doing a research on Gandhi and writing a book on it. I said, I sure am. Then he said something very unique thing. He said, my father, now this is an old man, so his father, of course, talking about all. He was a member of Indian National Congress, and he was along with the Hindus and especially Muslims also. And he claimed that this party used to be composed of ethical and moral persons
Mhm.
until Gandhi came in. And once he came in, he brought in all the corrupt guys inside, and
Mm.
these ethical and moral people were let go. Now he's telling me about it, and I looked at him. I said, "Listen, you did not surprise me. I
Mhm.
have noticed that. That's what exactly he was doing. He corrupted the whole party." Now, was it really because of the British? I don't think so. I don't. I think what the British were doing were they were looking at him and they say, he's also serving our purpose.
Mm.
They were looking at it from different angle, and that is, at least he's not asking Indians people to pick up their swords and their guns and go and kill. Okay,
Yeah.
at least he's keeping them in a way that if their people are getting killed because it's satyagraha, it's the Indians who are getting killed, not the
Mm.
whites. So they were looking at from different angle. Why don't we protect him from that angle? Because he gives a leverage against so-called revolutionaries of India. So they use him from that angle. And if you were a colonial colonist, you would do the same thing. You do the same thing. Okay. So from that angle, I think they were playing that game. But if you read the writings of some of the British officials, you will see what they really thought about this man. For example, remember the gentleman who was Lieutenant Governor of Punjab during Jallianwala Bagh tragedy,
Mm.
Michael O'Dwyer.
Yeah.
Michael O'Dwyer was the first white British person who banned Gandhi from coming to Punjab.
Yes.
You see, we people don't think, why would he do it? He recognized that this man is a dangerous man. He plays a race baiting. He
Mm.
makes you fight based on race. He recognized it. He was the first British official who recognized that. So
Mm.
again, I'm giving you a different picture. Again, if you look at Lord Weber, the second last viceroy from India to India, read his writings. It will shock you what he think of Gandhi, and there are so many others. And
Mm.
my book will show you that. Okay, take a look into that. So when you look at that angle, you see a different image also, which you not get it from the Indians today.
Mm.
Indians will not tell you that because Indians are only, we are given false narratives. Be careful of that. So
Yeah.
what I've given you in the book, you'll see the material that you have never read anywhere else. And also get this book.
Yeah.
Also get this book. You'll see even
Underground.
more details. Okay, you'll see even more details.
Yeah.
So if you are, again, bottom line, was he really a British agent? I don't call him an agent in a typical sense. I don't. Okay.
Mm.
I think British recognize that all he's going to do is he's going to hurt the Indians far more than anybody else have done it. They
Yeah, but
recognize.
he wasn't non-violent either, because he
Exactly.
was preaching non-violence, but
You're right.
actually was
You are
pushing people into
you are
violence.
100% right. Remember Winston Churchill. Read the warnings of Winston Churchill that he used to give to the Indians as to what will happen if they leave the subcontinent. Also read Winston Churchill's assessment of Gandhi. You'll be shocked. They were right. He was 100% right about Gandhi. He was 100% right about what would happen once they leave the subcontinent. Okay. So again, the perspective is that you gain a full scope of knowledge about this, what really happened, as opposed to let Indians give us false narrative or half baked narrative, and we buy them. Don't buy them at all. Okay, look at the whole evidence as to what really happened.
Mhm. So my last question to you is, at the end of his life, between 1940s to between 1948, or probably last 2 or 3 years of his life, he was trying to be brahmachari. He was getting nude massages by the teenage girls and doing all sort of stuff which is not acceptable in our society. What exactly was he trying to achieve with that? Was he
Okay.
practicing his religion, or he trying to get the validation from his people, or what was he trying to achieve?
Remember the word experiments with truth.
Yeah.
Remember that experiments with truth. Now, truth is he was also experimenting with Hinduism,
Mm.
not the Hinduism that you hear from Hindus. No, no, no. Hinduism as is written in the Hindu Shastras.
Mhm.
Gandhi used to read them. And one of the things he used to read them was also yoga. And within the yoga scriptures, it's very important is that semen, man's semen, drop of semen is precious. One drop is equal to like 80 drops of blood. So Gandhi was developing that to develop a superpower. you exercise brahmacharya. Well, brahmacharya has more details. One the detail is that even when you are aroused sexually, you're able to control your semen instead of coming out. Let's say you are engaged in relationship, you can suck it back. That means you can transform your male organ into a vacuum pump and suck it back, or you don't let it release. And in fact, you bring it up and you put it up in your head. You have become a superpower. You have attained so much superpower. So Gandhi was using these method experiments, and one of the experiments was that in his mind was that once you have attained this power, you can overcome any enemy that you have. So one the enemy that he in his mind was Muhammad Ali Jinnah. So by doing this, he thought he could overcome Muhammad Ali Jinnah also. Just think, I mean, it drives you crazy when you study all these things. Now, how many girls and women he used to sleep? Well, more than what the picture show. Actually, what I've heard, what I have evidence is, all the males who used to live in the ashram, he used to sleep with their women, their wives. That's right. He used to sleep with them too. So you can just see what kind of nonsense was going on at the time. Okay. So, but again, to understand that, you got to know Hinduism. Okay. And again, Hinduism, not from the Hindus that tell you what Hinduism is. No. Always do your independent research on what Hinduism is. Okay. Never trust a Hindu to tell you what Hinduism is, because you're going to get a false narrative. Do your own research. And if you want to know where to get the documents, call me. Okay. But that's where you learn what really was going on.
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, he was experimenting with his religion, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah.
Sardar GB Singh, thank you very much for taking time to having this interview. I hope to do the more interviews in the future with you on Dr. Ambedkar and the Indian Constitution and Gandhi as well.
Sure.
Thank you so much for taking time, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.